you have a seat or find a comfortable patch of wall or something like that.
You want to switch so you can see something?
And we'll get going. We should start off with introductions. I'm Jim Butcher. I write the author of the Dresden Files. We've only got the weekend. Let's not waste too much time here.
I'm Shannon Butcher, and I write paranormal romance and romantic suspense.
And I'm Andy Fox, and I write primarily funny vampire novels set in New Orleans. Also came out with a science fiction novel called The Good Humor Man, and have a bunch of other projects, both science fiction and fantasy.
Thank you. You were hard for the money. Okay. Really a case of overgenerosity happening. I just need
Here, give that one to him.
Okay.
And then we'll share this one because you already have my germs.
Right, sure.
Yeah, you don't want to share this one because my kid has strep throat. So.
Oh.
So I guess you got designated mic for the weekend.
Okay, so the title of the panel is Ocean or Just a Wave. I know that for a while there, urban fantasy was. I first started reading it in the early '90s, and urban fantasy then was basically elves driving NASCAR. I mean, there were a few other things. I mean, Emma Bull was doing a few things. Mercedes Lackey was doing a few things. But other than that, there really you would kind of see the occasional urban fantasy novel. I know the one that first really caught my imagination was the one that Harry Turtledove did, called The Case of the Toxic Spell Bomb, which was not really urban fantasy as much as it was just outright fantasy. It just happened to kind of have the same, the kind of the gumshoe sensibility to go along with it. That was kind of where I got started on it. But I believe the roots of it kind of go back quite a bit farther than that. I mean, just in terms, in general terms of, hey, we're going to take these, these elements and put them together. Probably Lovecraft was one of the first guys to start doing that. I mean, as far as modern writing goes. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Where does it come from? Where does the urban fantasy we're doing today, the whole vampire thing, the whole supernatural thing? What is it? Where do we get it? Because that seems to be a good place to start.
Okay, well, I feel like fantasy literature basically lives primarily where its writers and its readers live. And it started out, I mean, if you look at fantasy as a form of literature instead of a marketing category, which really only dates back to the 1970s with Judy Lynn Del Rey, originally fantasy was an oral literature. And most of the tale tellers, lived in farming communities, rural areas. I was trying to think, what would have been possibly the original urban fantasy, and I'd have to say probably the story of the Golem. From Prague, the story of Rabbi Lowe, his creation of a sort of a proto Frankenstein's monster out of clay that originally he utilized as a kind of a household servant, but when the townspeople of Prague threatened to burn down the Jewish ghetto, the Golem was pressed into service as kind of the defender of the Jews, and then later in the story ends up getting out of the control of the rabbi and had to be powered down, and supposedly was hidden away in the attic of the synagogue. There you had your storytellers actually were an urban people, and so I'd have to say maybe the Golem was sort of the ancestor of urban fantasy. Of course, urban fantasy, like I just kind of mentioned, I think is at least in part an effort on the behalf of various marketing departments to sort of earn their paychecks, come up with what they feel might be the next big thing. But I genuinely think too it hasn't only been a marketing category. It's also been something that writers have genuinely wanted to write. And my sense of why writers would want to write urban fantasy is more and more writers are, you know, just living in urban or suburban environments nowadays, and that's what they know.
Do you have anything to add?
To the history lesson? No. I'm good.
Awesome. Okay, then, but at the same time, I mean, you say urban fantasy and you kind of stick it in the city, but, you know, I mean, if you look at things that one of the most successful urban fantasies at the moment is Charlene Harris's series, and it's set in a small town. You know,
Rural fantasy.
Yeah, rural fantasy.
Woo!
I don't know. I think the idea of taking, of taking the elements of the fantastic elements and just kind of blending them in with the contemporary of wherever you are. I don't think urban fantasy is something new that we've come up with. I think it's something that we've rediscovered and stuck a new name tag on. I mean, you go back to Grimm's fairy tales, and you know you hear about bad things that happen when you go in the woods. At the time, everybody had the woods; it was right there. You know that was their. You know, you talk about that sort of the sort of things you run into in Grimm's, and that was the kind of stuff that was part of your everyday life. You know, there are woods right over there. Yes, there is a well. There are these mushroom rings and so on. But. I'm fumbling here. Somebody throw in.
Talk about where it's going.
But I don't know that.
Guesstimate.
You can use Dresden as an example.
You're a writer. Come on.
No, I'm a writer, and this is early morning for me. I'm in the middle of the night to come see you people. All right, where's it going? All right, I think there's been a lot of success with blending those fantastic elements so that were elves and race cars at the time, and with you know probably what is one of the most American of genres, which is kind of the hard-boiled private eye story. I've had a lot of fun with it. A lot of other people have too. There's some very good writers who are writing it right now. I think Lily St. Crow's Jill Kismet series is just excellent material. It's much in the same vein. There's a new guy named Harry Connolly. His stuff is really good. And plus, you know, the whole. I mean, I think urban fantasy was new life, as it were, for the entire vampire genre. Because I remember when I was trying to break in, when I was getting all the rejection letters from editors and so on. One of the pieces of advice we kept getting from editors is no more vampire stories. Vampires are dead. Yeah, they ended with Anne Rice. And yeah, you can imagine.
And now they sparkle.
That's right before they burst into flame.
Yeah, and now they sparkle.
Thomas sparkles. To briefly play devil's advocate for a moment, hopefully to spark an interesting discussion. Looking at urban fantasy possibly as not necessarily something wholly new, because we all know that doesn't happen, but something new in the sense of being reinvented. What about considering modern urban fantasy in the light of an attempt to reconcile this new world of science with the old world of wolves and elves and vampires that science was supposed to make go away but didn't, and I think I'm paraphrasing something you wrote there. But
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
I have no idea. But if science isn't going to make those things go away, then we have to deal with them. But our old methods of dealing with them aren't going to work anymore because we don't have the woods. So what about urban fantasy as a way of fitting them in with science?
Humanizing.
So you mean like
Well, that sounds. Maybe you should come sit up here. Honestly.
Well, I don't know. I guess I could jump on that one a little bit there.